Bhakti Sutras is also in a similar way. It is said to be everything that you need to know for the spiritual path, but it is not about the path of meditation, it's about the path of devotion. And the whole central point, as I've said again multiple times, right, is that bhav, the devotional mood, that is final liberation. That is what all this is about. That is the non-dual state, right? And so the whole premise is, if we know that bhav is the essence of it all, that love is who we really are, that that's what we really want more than anything, then why would we practice something else to get that? Why don't we just make love? Why don't we just make devotion the practice, right? And it's said in the Narada Bhakti Sutras, I've said this before and I'm saying it again, right? That we don't practice devotion to get something else. It is its own reward. It is the one thing that is self-fulfilling and self-evident. Yeah? And that's why Narada uses the term parama prem to describe final liberation. Yeah? It's the fullness of love. It's not an escape from life. It's the fullness of love itself. And that's what Ram Dass embodies so well, right? Ram Dass did not escape his pain. He did not escape his wheelchair. He wasn't pushing away any of that stuff. That's not what liberation meant for him. Ram Dass's practice was to love everything, right? That practice that he would teach, I am loving awareness, I am loving awareness, I am loving awareness. He lived that. And when he talked about loving his wheelchair, and when he talked about loving the pain in his body, that was something that he earned, that ability to be able to do that through practice. That was his practice, his love. And that was also the state, that was the fruit that we all got to drink from being around him, was that love, right? The fruit and the means, the practice and the result are one and the same. So Ram Dass practiced love, and then we all got to drink that fruit, right, of being around him. And of course, that's a practice in Bhakti Yoga, is being around saintly beings, right? Being around high devotees. Yeah, because one of the things Ram Dass said often is that devotion is spread from one soul to another. Those that do not have it catch it from those that do. So just being around good association, right? Being able to be of service to the saints, service to high beings, service to high devotees is a good practice for us. And that's actually how Narada came to be the being that fulfillment of the expression of love that Narada is, right? That expression of Parama Prem. That's actually how Narada came to that. So in a previous universe, right, because we talked about this cycle of creation, right? The universe is created and it's destroyed and then it happens again. And so there's things that can happen in previous universes that still reverberate out and affect us today, right, according to the cosmology. So in a previous universe, Narada was born to a mother. He did not have a father. We don't know who his father was. And she was a person, she was a person of not very much means. And she found her way by her good fortune. She was able to make her way into a hermitage where there was these high saints, and she was able to be of service there. So she was able to be of service to these really high saintly beings. And they took care of her and bestowed many blessings on her. And so Narada grew up like that. He grew up serving, preparing meals for saintly beings, for siddhas. And he got to consume prasad from that. And that good association purified him and made him ripe for the devotion-filled path. And when Narada was still a young boy, his mother died by a poisonous snake bite. But Narada had enough purity and wisdom in him at that point that he saw that everything was Sri Hari's Leela, and so he took that as a sign from God, that he needed to leave the hermitage, that his time there was done. And so he wandered as an ascetic, as a monk, and he sat down on a tree to meditate, and he meditated on the pure form of Hari found within his heart. And through that meditation, Hari revealed his deepest, most truest form to him, right? He had a pure moment of darshan. And Sri Hari told him that this would be the only time that he would be able to see Sri Hari's true form in this lifetime. And that the reason why he was showing it to him was to inspire longing. Yeah? So then the darshan went away, and Narada felt both excitement and longing and despair at the same time, and then devoted himself fervently. All he wanted was just to sing the pure name of God. And so he wandered just singing that name, which is one-pointed devotion. And that's how he ripened into Parama Prem, right? The fulfillment of love. And at the time of his death, Sri Hari gave him some boons. So one, he said, if you're dying here in your human form, you'll be born into a celestial form. 1. 2, your knowledge will carry with you even through the dissolution of the universe and the creation of the next. So you will always have knowledge with you, and especially the knowledge of devotion. And so then the universe destroys, a new one's built or born, and then this time Narada is actually born from Brahma himself when Brahma is creating, right? And Brahma is described sometimes as the breath of Sri Hari, right? The breath of the absolute, right? That creative impulse is Brahma, and Narada is born out of that, which means that the Kumaras, those 4 eternal beings, are actually Narada's older brothers. So we get this. So Narada was actually instrumental in creating the Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana. So how that goes is Vyasa, who is said to have organized the Vedas and have written the Bhagavad Gita, right, and just has all this immense knowledge. So Vyasa is depressed. He is despondent. And Narada appears before him, and Vyasa's like, yo, I don't understand what's going on. Like, why, I did all this stuff. I've done all this practice. I have all the Vedic knowledge. Why don't I feel satisfied? And Narada said, well, it's because you haven't written about devotion yet. You haven't written about the fulfillment of the path. It's all there, but you haven't focused on the fruit. And so Narada then instructed Vyasa and inspired him to write the Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana. And then in that text, we have this beautiful scene where Narada is despondent and he's depressed. And the Kumaras come down and they come to Narada and they're like, why are you so blue? What's going on, buddy? And Narada explains, well, I just had this encounter. I just came across bhakti, devotion, in human form as a young woman, and with her were her 2 sons, Jnana, wisdom, and Vairagya, dispassion, or as Ram Dass would often kind of translate that, the falling away of worldliness. Right? So I saw, young Bhakti with her 2 sons, but her sons were older than she was, and they were very old and frail, and they were sleeping, and they couldn't be woken. They were so weak. And Bhakti was so despondent. She was so sad. And so I asked, what's going on? And she explained that they were doing very well. They were thriving. they were thriving. They were doing so well in the previous 3 yugas. But then the Kali Yuga came and they all became weak. They lost their power and they were wandering and struggling. But then they made it to Vrindavan. And when they came to Vrindavan, bhakti, devotion, was renewed with vigor, and her youth came back, right? But jnana, wisdom, and vairagya, dispassion, were still very weak, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't know. And so, Narada thought about this, and he said, well, I don't know. I mean, we could try. Let's try, So they did all these recitations. Narada knows all the Vedas, and he knows all knowledge, past and future, and so he recited the Vedas and even the Bhagavad Gita, and that was enough that it woke them up a little bit. They're kind of like groggy, and they're like, oh, what's going on? And then they fell back asleep. It wasn't enough to wake them up. And Narada's like, what am I supposed to do? And so he meditated, right? Narada has self-knowledge, so he went straight to Sri Hari in his own heart. And God, a booming voice came from the sky and said, you will meet these wise sages and they will tell you what to do. And so then Narada comes across the Kumaras, who are his older brothers, and he says, what do I do? And then they say to him, well, you know what to do. You were the one that told Vyasa about the Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana. That's what you got to recite. That's what will restore the wisdom and the dispassion.